What is a villanelle? This tutorial will cover what a villanelle is, the structure of it, and also the history. The structure of a villanelle with the poem by Dylan Thomas, and how the structure of a villanelle contributes to the understanding of a poem by Elizabeth Bishop. A highly structured villanelle is a 19-line poem with 2 repeating rhymes and 2 refrains. A refrain is a part of a poem that is repeated. This is very similar to the strategy commonly known as repetition. The form is made up of 5 tercets, stanzas containing 3 lines, followed by a quatrain, a stanza containing 4 lines. The first and third lines of the opening tercet are repeated alternately in the last lines of the succeeding stanzas. Then in the final stanza, the refrain serves as the poem's 2 concluding lines. During the Renaissance, the villanella and the villancico were Italian and Spanish dance songs. French poets who called their poems villanelle did not follow any specific schemes, rhymes, or refrains. Rather, the title implied that, like the Italian and Spanish dance songs, their poems spoke of simple, often pastoral or rustic themes. While some scholars believe that the form as we know it today has been in existence since the 16th century, others argue that only one Renaissance poem was ever written in that manner, and that it wasn't until the late 19th century that a villanelle was defined as a fixed form by French poet Theodore de Banville.
I know that was a lot, so I will go over everything again using Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. So as stated before, a villanelle has 19 lines, a rhyme scheme of ABA, 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 ABAA. 5 tercets, 1 ending quatrain. Line 1 and line 3 are concluding lines of the poem. 2 repeating refrains that are in the last line of every stanza. This poem has 19 lines. Check. Now let's check the rhyme scheme. ABA, 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 ABAA. Check. And the tercets and the quatrains, remember these stanzas contain 3 and 4 lines. Check times 2. Let's go back to the first stanza and look at lines 1 and 3. The refrains are night and light. They are the concluding lines in the next stanzas. Finally, does this poem have refrains as the last concluding lines? Let's check. So, is the poem a villanelle? Of course.
Now we'll go over how the structure of a villanelle contributes to the understanding of the one art by Elizabeth Bishop. But first, here's some background information. The narrator is female and is speaking in first person. We know the narrator is female because unless specified within the context of the poem, we can assume that the narrator is the same gender as the author. Also, the narratee in this poem is male. The narrator is using hyperbole to prove to the narratee that losing him was no disaster. The narrator didn't really lose cities and rivers because that is impossible. She is just making these statements to prove a point, which is her purpose in the poem. The narrator also uses the villanelle as a strategy to keep her thoughts together while she talks about the narratee. However, she almost loses the structure. Now let's go over one art and how the structure of a villanelle contributes to the meaning of it. As you can see, the structure has 19 lines, a rhyme scheme of ABA, 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 ABAA. 5 tercets, 1 ending quatrain, line 1 and line 3 are the concluding lines of the poem, 2 repeating refrains that are in the last line of every stanza. But what does this all mean? Look at all of the tercets. They follow the structure of a villanelle. The subject of these stanzas are not about the narratee. Now look at the quatrain. There is something different. It has parentheses, which really contributes to the meaning of a poem. of the poem. In line 16, the narrator gets off topic when she begins to mention the narratee, who has never been mentioned in the other stanzas. Then in the last line, the narrator says, "Write it," because she was losing her composure and forced herself to finish before she lost complete control of her thoughts. As you can see, a villanelle is not just the structure of a poem, but it also contributes to the meaning of a poem as well. In one art, the narrator uses the villanelle to keep the structure of her thoughts. In the end, she still lost it when she began to talk about the narrative. This contributes to the author's purpose, which is no matter how hard you try, you cannot hide your true feelings, and you cannot use poetry to lie about them.